Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, this is Dr. Doreen Downing, host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. What an opportunity I get in meeting new people all the time who have something really valuable. They've had a story, they've had experiences and challenges that they bring to their work. And I get to not only hear about their current passion, but I get to hear about, well, who were they before they got so passionate about what they do now? And I will be introducing you today to a new friend, Junie Moon. Hi, Junie.
Hi, happy to be your new friend.
It's a way, these conversations that are spontaneous feels like we're sitting down for a cup of tea and getting to know each other more deeply
Yeah,
by just opening up this space to listen to each other. And yeah, it's mostly me listening to you and asking you, but it's also an opportunity for you to shine. So thank you. I'm going to read a bio that I've got here. And so people get to know you right away, some of what you're doing currently. Junie Moon is CEO of Midlife Love Out Loud, global love mentor and best-selling author, certified shadow work coach. And for over 30 years, she's helped thousands of women break free from self-doubt and claim their birthright to love themselves fully and live unapologetically. Junie guides midlife women to release old patterns, build deep self-trust, and attract next level love from a place of confidence and wholeness. And her work goes beyond dating advice. It's about becoming the woman who naturally calls in lasting love. And she's been featured on News 12 New Jersey, Thrive Global, Authority Magazine, and is the award-winning author of Loving the Whole Package, Shed the Shame and Live Life Out Loud. And she also hosts the Midlife Love Out Loud podcast and has shared the stage with thought leaders like John Gray and Marcy Shimoff and other thought leaders. And wow, Junie, sounds like you're a groundbreaking thought leader yourself.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've been busy. I've
Yes.
been doing some things.
Busy, yeah, and I think that that's a good way to start our process today and opening up. Yeah, we didn't come into this life all busy. You know, we just came into a fresh little girls saying, "Hello, world." And
Yeah.
I always like to start way back then around what did you come into? What was that early life experience? Because in my point of view, as a psychologist, that's where some of those imprints are around who you are, who you think you are, and what you believe about yourself and life and what's possible. So,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly how I view it as well. Well, I came into this world very happy disposition, bubbly, free-spirited. Um, yeah, just really loving life. And had a mom who kind of had some control issues and would have a look that would have me feel inadequate or uh, unloved. And I learned at a very young age I had to be very careful. I learned at a very young age that I needed to look a certain way or be a certain way. Otherwise, the kids wouldn't like me because happy-go-lucky teacher's pet was not flying so well. And so things started to shift around 8 years old where I I was just being really careful. And I really pulled back. And then middle school, challenging, really challenging with the bullying. So by the time I got to high school, I didn't even raise my hands in class. I was so afraid to be seen. I was so afraid to stand out and be mocked or embarrassed. So yeah, the early part, I would run around the neighborhood and just be happy-go-lucky. And then the more conscious I got and the more I looked at my surroundings and the people in it, I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be criticized. I didn't want to lose love. And all of that set me up to being very, very careful for a long period of time after.
Oh, thank you for that intro. It's very descriptive, and I really see already the bright spirit that you are today. You and I have had some conversations, so it's really great to see that that's what you came in with, this beautiful, bright, energetic,
Yeah.
this light. And what you're also talking about, it feels like, and the listeners can relate, I'm sure, is the kind of constriction that a family, parents, society puts on our bright spirits, and what then happens to us. And it sounds like for you, it was more of a, okay, I'm going to learn something here about how I need to be and how I need to show up, and I'm going to be quiet and hold myself back.
Yep.
Interesting. And that, isn't that amazing that we figure things out so early?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as I say, as I share, we are born with this kind of in us, this part of us that wants to survive. This is old stuff, many, many, many moons ago when we were tribal. If we got kicked out of the tribe, we didn't survive. So we're born into this life with these survival instincts. I always joke and say, you might be having the greatest sex in your life, but if the house is burning down, you're going to get out of the house. So, we want to make sure that we don't get kicked out of the tribe. However, it's overshooting often.
Oh,
And then we cut off aspects of who we are.
mm,
And we put it, as I say, in shadow. We go, well, I better not be bubbly and bright because people are picking on me. Let me throw it away in shadow and not look at it and just be quiet, just dim my light. Let's just let me just fit in and be what other people want. And that serves us well up to a point when we're little because we're vulnerable. We need our parents and we don't want to be picked on and all that stuff. However, I brought it into my adulthood, which is what most of us do until we wake up and go, I'm jumping through a lot of hoops here. I'm giving away myself. I'm not speaking my truth. I've got this mean inner critic that tells me I'm not good enough, having me work so hard and trying to prove how great I am. I'm exhausted and now I'm done. But we don't necessarily know how to dial back and clean up all the messaging that we picked up along the way. And I call that programming until we know how to release that, which is what happened to me. And I found this body of work called shadow work. And it was mind blowing. Here I was thinking, I was 200 pounds at the time, thinking that I had a food problem, thinking that I wasn't good enough, to get my needs met or to speak my truth. I walked on eggshells in my marriage, all of that. So I could fit in, so that I can be loved, so I wouldn't be alone. And then I found out that all of these strategies, if you will, to make sure I was safe was just me trying to not get kicked out of the tribe. And that's when this work helped me reverse it and heal it so that I can lower the volume of the inner critic and know my value, know my worth, speak my truth, stand my grounds, and then move into healthy relationships. And because I know how to do that now and have the most amazing men on the friggin' planet, that's why I help others do that now as well.
fabulous. Well, before we get into the details of shadow work and the waking up that you did, because a lot of people don't, and that's partly what I do here, is to help people see that maybe they might still be trapped in what you talked about, in that and it feels like a trap, and this kind of looking good and what
Yeah.
inner voice is saying that's mean and critical and you
Yeah.
better or else. So there was something that you just did, and I think it has to do with how to do this waking up. In your voice, if we dialed back just about a minute, there was a compassionate tone to your voice towards the little one who didn't want to be kicked out of the tribe or didn't, wanted to belong,
Yeah.
seem like she had some value. And the only way to do that was to fit in. And so I noticed that self-compassion it reached me as a way that my listeners could listen into if they go back a couple of minutes here and
I
say,
love that you brought that up because when I talk about the work that I do, there's so many aspects to it. And the broad stroke is deep self-compassion and that's why the tagline of my book is shed the shame.
mhm.
When we can truly love ourselves and realize we did the best we could and that we were wired to some extent to survive, to make these choices, to play it safe, that we really did the best we could for these reasons, and to not rake ourselves over the coals when we do make a mistake or drop something. I mean, like to really listen to how we speak to ourselves. When we can truly go, oh, honey, of course you're scared. Of course you don't want to be alone. Of course this is uncomfortable for you. And then you get the tools to know that you are worthy of so much more. That's when things shift. So I'm glad you caught that, because as little kids, we were vulnerable and we really did what we needed to do to get us to this point right now. It's just some of the old strategies are working against us now and not helping us really have the life that we desire or the relationships that we want.
Yes, the life we desire and the relationships. Oh boy. Well, we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes, but before I move on in your story,
Yeah.
it's always good to hear. I know you mentioned your mother. I know you mentioned bullying and also what that was like. If you have some story specifically that has you being scared around speaking up, anything that might come up that was a time and a place and has a story about it, anything?
Oh my God, there's a million. I mean, the terror I had of speaking up and sharing what was going on inside of me, I was really, really scared. Um, do you want more of the childhood thing or just anything?
Whatever pops for you now. It was just
Yeah.
I know that people like to hear the scene, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I love the question. I'm going to go to my marriage just because
Okay.
it was just so painful to not speak up. We had a child, and he was challenging, and it's a long story there, but he needed a lot of support. And my ex, who I was married to, was a bully, and he just had such an aggressive way about him. And I was scared of him. I was scared to say, "Hey, that's not okay." I was scared to even ask to get my own needs met in that marriage. Even forget about my son. I was afraid of rocking the boat. I was afraid that if I actually spoke up, not only would I have that aggression come toward me, which of course would be a smart move, and not that he would ever physically hurt me, but that aggression with his words were really scary. But in those moments, that conflict of him yelling at me or me asking for something and then having that energy come toward me had me feel so alone, had me feel so disconnected from him, and that felt very uncomfortable. Will we break up? Will he leave me? Which, now I look back and it's like I have so much compassion for the part of me that was so scared to rock the boat. And ultimately, I just didn't know I could in a healthy way. I didn't know I could speak up in a clean way, in a way that I could be heard, in a way that could have potentially brought us even closer together if I had these tools. But yeah, the price I paid for holding down my voice was I ate a lot of food to soothe myself. That was my friend. That was, my go-to was let me just eat a lot of food. But not speaking up was my way of playing it safe. But the price I paid was really, really painful. But I will say that once I started doing the shadow work and really for myself, got my mentor and started doing the work for myself, things changed. And I remember this one moment, and this is a great little story. My son was getting bullied in school, just like I was, like how horrible for my kid, and let alone me have to relive it too. My son was about 12 years old, and he came home after a day of being bullied and started getting bullied by his dad. And I stood there, freezing like I used to. But then I remembered what I was learning in shadow work, and I stood between the two of them. And I said, enough, time out. We need to stop this right now. And I felt empowered and strong. And I protected my kid in a way I never was able to protect. I was already starting to protect myself, but I was able to really stand in front of my kid and say, yeah, this is stopping right now. And oh my God, it was, yeah, there are no words. I was so grateful. So grateful. And that's why I do the work I do, because when we don't feel empowered, when we feel like we don't have a choice, when we feel like we can't really speak up, it's like crushing to the soul.
Yes.
We don't get to express our truth, our essence. And how does that translate into deep intimacy? There isn't any, because we're on guard all the time. So that's why I knew I had to do this work.
Oh, wow. My whole body is tingling because you are so strong and so powerful in that moment where
Yeah.
it was this, it's never going to be the same again, because you just stood up and said no
Yeah.
in such a powerful way that
Yeah.
you deeply got it, and it came from a deep place, and it was obviously heard.
Oh, yeah.
Because you guarded, and they talk about the mother lion or the lioness.
Oh yeah, she woke up. The mama bear was there. Yes.
Was there. Wonderful.
Yeah, because you see, one of the things is, and we won't go too much into this, but one of the things is his dad, my ex, he told me, like a parent, told me, do not ever throw me under the bus in front of him, because sometimes the two of them would be at it and my ex would be acting in such an immature way, such bad behavior. And I would say, guys, come on, let's chill out. But he saw that as undermining his authority. And he said, if you need to talk to me, you talk to me offline. So I had taken that information from the parent, so to speak. But then I took my power back and I was like, yo, not cool. Not cool.
That was pretty clear when for those who are only listening and didn't get to watch what Junie just did, what he did to her was to put his finger like this and shake it, or whatever they wag. So
Yeah.
shake and wag is a shag.
I got shagged.
So I want to ask, but before I ask this important question about the waking up and shadow work, I'm going to take a quick break.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back with Junie Moon, who's already led us into deep understanding about what it's like to start out in a life where you feel like you aren't seen and heard and appreciated, and that you have to kind of squeeze yourself into something that you're not in order to suffer losses. And we are now back. Thank you. Where we were is this waking up and this empowering moment when you found your voice and was able to intervene on behalf of somebody you love so much, which was your son. And we talked about the mama bear coming and spreading
Yes.
her arms. But before, you said that this was already a time when you were doing work with yourself. So where was the moment? I mean, I know we just don't usually wake up, but oftentimes that is true. So what was your how would you describe you waking up to the fact that you were trapped in a pattern and you wanted to find yourself, your voice, and live a life that was more fulfilling?
I wish I can say there was a moment, but there were lots of moments, lots of mini wake ups. I guess the biggest wake up call, though, was when I hit 200 pounds. I'm 5'3", and I hit 200 pounds, and my body was in so much pain. And I had gone up and down the scale 40, 50 pounds at a time, so many times. And like I said, I thought I had a food problem, and I knew there was something else going on. I knew I was unhappy. I knew I was so full of stress and micromanaging everything. And then this body of work showed up. It was a blessing. I was at an event. I went into a workshop. It was profound. This woman was doing the shadow work, but she didn't even call it shadow work. And I asked her what it was, and the rest is history. But that was the time period of just so much self-hatred, such a huge inner critic, and just really so uncomfortable in my body. But there were lots of moments of, I was an actress in my 20s, and the terror of going on stage, and they would have to hold the show sometimes because I was afraid to be seen. Wanting to do I was an acupuncturist and wanting to do a presentation, but I was so terrified of speaking in public. I mean, there were all these moments of what's wrong with me. But ultimately, the biggest thing was when I hit the 200 pounds, and I just saw through this body of work what was really going on inside of me. Yes, the relationship was dysfunctional. Yes, he's a piece of work. And I brought my chips to the party.
Yes. You're so funny.
Thanks.
I mean, you really make interviewing a fun experience
Aw,
for me.
thank you.
Well, and it's so fascinating. It's just like I'm with you every step of the way, listening and being in your experience. And I want to know something about, I mean, because I'm a psychologist, I love shadow work and I know what it is, but I think listeners don't. So maybe a brief explanation because we don't have a lot
Yeah,
of time, but since it is part of your work and what you do, I think
yeah.
it'd be good to hear, well, what is shadow work?
Thank you. Because there's a lot of people running around saying they're doing shadow work. There's different ways of doing shadow work. So let's start with just real quickly what the shadow is. It's a Jungian term, and the shadow is the part of us that we want to hide, a part of us that we feel shame around, or we just don't want to be like. I never want to be like that person or this quality. And it doesn't have to be bad qualities either. It's like, I don't want to be too bright and bubbly. So let me dim my light and just be more contained. So the shadow is a part of us that we've lost access to in some way. And we then act in a different way, probably the opposite way in some way, but we can't really contain it. It comes out sideways. And when you say, I'm never going to be angry, but then you blow, or I'm never going to be vulnerable, but then you spill over on people, there's just, it's not contained. So shadow work is, and this body of work I'm trained in is from shadow work seminars with Cliff Barry and Mary Ellen Wallen. So I'm licensed in it, special processes to help people see what's in shadow, because anything that's in shadow is I mean, we can have a sense of it, but those are usually the blind spots. Those are usually the places in our life that we don't actually notice, because we said we'd never be like that. We're trying to be the good little girl or the people pleaser, but underneath it is the fear of actually saying, hey, I don't like this, or I want this. So many different nuances. So shadow work, from my perspective, my training is shining a light on the unconscious mind, on the places that people don't necessarily know they've lost access to. Typically, people have patterns or challenges in their life and behaviors that they wish they would change, like my food, or continuing relationships with narcissists or whatever it is. Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep sabotaging? Well, typically the reason is in the unconscious mind, and there are beliefs associated. And so shadow work helps us shine a light on those parts, bring them into light so that we can do the healing, so that we can really be an integrated, conscious human being by reclaiming all of who we are, shadow and light. How was that?
Yes. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, as you were talking, especially in the work that I do and people who don't want to look at what's behind or, the pain or what they've tucked away. And I was just thinking the light, and this is what I'd like to hear. Well, this is what I like to tell listeners, I guess, based on what
Mhm.
you just said. And it's about the light doesn't have to be a neon light. It could be a candle light, right?
Yeah.
Let's just bring something in so you can see, which would be increasing your awareness and being more conscious of, because what is behind you, the shadow, or is yours. It's not, yeah, yours is not mine. I mean, when the
Yeah.
sun shines on me, there's my shadow right there. So I love the invitation to be, this idea that, hey, folks, it could be, it doesn't have to be a bright light yet, but let's just open the space and peek in and go, hello
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go away. I see you.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be scary either. A lot of people go, oh my God, this sounds
Yes.
intense. We're looking at shadows. Ah. And I always say
Yeah.
it's like the kid in the bedroom and in the middle of the night goes, Mommy, Mommy, screaming, there's a monster under my bed. And mom turns on the light and looks under the bed and says, come on, let's look under the bed. And by turning on the light, you
Yes.
get to see what's really there. And I
Yes.
say it's way more scary to not know what's under the bed. It's
Yeah.
way more scary to not be in the driver's seat and have your shadows be in the driver's seat, because that's typically what happens is if we are not aware of the patterns that are underneath, the fears that are underneath, the shame that's underneath, we're going to be acting in a certain way that may not be in our highest and best, and often spills out into all our relationships. And if we really want healthy partnership and healthy relationships with everyone, children, families, coworkers, we need to know who we are and what's going on inside of us. So we need to get back into the driver's seat, and we shine the light on so that you can have access to all parts of you by choice. Doesn't mean you have to be everything, but you now get a choice to go, oh, I'm going to be like this, or I'm not going to be like this, but I choose, versus the shadow going, oh yeah, you're going to just be the people pleaser and that's it. Things like that.
Okay, I have a little example, and this leads to your work around relationships and finding love. I would say that early on, with abandonment, mother that went into a hospital and dad that remarried and left with grandma, that I made a decision to not let anybody get close because they're going to leave, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I carried deep into my life.
Yeah.
And in that kind of I don't know, it wasn't really shadow work, but in a way it was, because the looking at myself, becoming more aware of how come I'm whatever I was, 30, 40, 50, and still not have a loving relationship in my life. Hello. My heart was, and even my girlfriends, when I was 40 years old, I had four of them that were all there and told the story of how hard it was to get close to me. So,
Mm, yeah.
I was the little bit by little bit that you're talking about in terms of waking up, that,
Yeah.
oh, gee, I'm holding love away from me.
Yeah.
And so this idea that, oh, Doreen, no wonder you're not calling in a healthy, loving relationship. It's because you've closed yourself off. So this to come into this part of your work, opening up to how that by healing ourselves, knowing ourselves, and that I think healing has a lot to do with looking at the kinds of things you've just talked about and understanding yourself and facing your own fear of being, well, for mine, it was like my vulnerable part being loved, but somebody was going to go away. And I
Exactly.
didn't want to risk that. So that was my, oh, poor me, kind of, oh, little one in there,
Yeah.
I'm scared. But to actually have, so in terms of working with somebody like I was, what would you, because that's your work, is helping people find lasting love.
Yeah, and I had a similar thing. My dad died when I was 14. So I had huge fear of being left alone, and I became the independent queen. And I too had a big challenge with opening up and being vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we ask what it is that you want. We start there, the North Star. Like, what would be the ideal scenario? Oh, I really want a partner and I really want to have that deep connection and friendship. And, you paint the picture. And what's the challenge? Well, I'm terrified. All my relationships have had this aspect, or I've been left, or I've been whatever, like what's the big fear? What is it that you don't want to create again? And then we whittle it down to like what are the patterns? What are the challenges? And everybody's going to have their own thing. Ultimately, we get down to fear. We all have the fear. We all have the fear that something bad is going to happen. And so, depending on what the fear is, fear of abandonment or fear of loss, that's going to be one direction where we need to bolster up the person to know that they are safe, that they can trust themselves, that they can open and live, and it's worth it, that they can reveal and let somebody in and take that risk. And I use the word risk because everything is a risk. Opening up our heart is a risk.
Yes.
Speaking our truth is a risk.
Yes.
Going for our dreams is a
Yes,
risk.
I just feel like yes.
Yes. And
Sister,
so
go.
and so we work with this part called the risk manager, this part inside of us that's kind of going, ooh, this looks dangerous. This is risky. And that part tends to go full blast and shuts things down, like our voice, like our hearts. So depending on what the person reveals, and for example, the one with the abandonment or trust issues or the vulnerable part, we work there, and we then step by step move that needle so that the person can feel solid and supported. What does support look like within themselves? It's, instead of looking outside in, it's resourcing, it's agency, it's going inside and knowing that you will be taken care of. And that's not from the head, that's from the body. And so that's just one way. So depending on what is presented as the challenge, and then we, kind of reveal, oh, well, this is what happened, or this is the pattern that keeps showing up, this is the fear, then we start to shift and heal the part that got injured, got wounded, the belief system, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy of this, who do I think I am, whatever, I call it the not good enough itis syndrome, So once we kind of get a clue of the core wounding, if you will, then we can start to shift it and get people clearer transformation, solid empowerment, to be able to have whatever kind of relationship they want. But the relationship starts with themselves. And that's where people really get messed up, in my opinion. Everybody is thinking outside in. Let me get the right person. Let me find the right person. Well, the right person is you. And when you can have your...
Say that
Yes.
again. I love it. I love it. Say that again.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. I think this is where people get it wrong. I see it all the time. People are like, I'm not finding the right person. They're this, they're that, they're this, they're that. And ultimately, they, how I view it is they haven't found the right person within themselves. And when people can get aligned and really know who they are and have their own back and fill up their own cup, then the right person comes, because you will match them, and you will not go to the person that's not a right match because it's not going to feel good to you. So I always say, start with yourself, become your own soulmate, and then magic happens. Everybody around you shifts, and the person you desire shows up. Maybe not overnight, but who cares? You're having a great life because now you have yourself and you're not feeling empty or alone or challenged. It's just a different way of looking at it.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I felt like I was standing up and applauding when you said the right person is yourself.
Yes, it is. And thankfully, the women that come to me to work with me, they know that that's what they need.
Yeah.
They know it's not another dating app. They know that it's not another relationship fix. It's working within themselves, within their hearts, within their self-esteem, with their boundaries, whatever it is. And so we heal, and healing is possible. Look, if I could stay in the same size body for over 20 years, if I can find the man of my dreams, if I can speak my truth and speak to many thousands of people without my fear the way it used to be, like if I can do it, anybody can do it. So there's certainly hope for everybody.
Wonderful. Well, we're coming to the end, and I think you mentioned you had a gift you'd like to pass on, and we'll put it in the show notes. What is that?
Oh, I'm so glad to offer something I normally don't, but we were talking before, and I'm like, so much of finding our voice and finding ourselves is quieting the inner critic, understanding the inner critic, and then quieting it. And because people want to get rid of it, but it actually serves you. We just don't want it so loud. We want you to feel empowered and strong while it's next to you, kind of going, maybe you might want to look at that next time. So I have this guidebook. It's 10 steps to quiet your inner critic. Or I should say, tame your inner critic. Tame your inner critic. So it's a very powerful guidebook. I always encourage people to print it out and do it because it's a really powerful process so that you can feel in alignment and befriend your inner critic so that you can have the life that you want. You could have the relationships you want. It's a really great first step and a very powerful first step.
Great. Thank you for the offer. We're at the end, and I always like to open it up just to see what might want to come through in terms of you closing our time together.
We don't know what we don't know until we do. Mm-hmm. And I love that you asked that question. This was not planned. While we're talking about the unconscious, when we're talking about the shadows, there's just so much we don't know about ourselves. And I truly, truly, truly know in my heart of hearts that there's only so much we can learn on our own. And that there's nothing like having somebody with a flashlight to help you see some of the things that are in shadow. So you don't know what you don't know. And so if you're struggling or suffering, relax into the fact that maybe there's just something that you can't see, and that's okay. Yeah. And then find out what it is. Because when you do, then you have choice, and that is freeing.
Yeah, that's self-discovery, which leads to self-empowerment. Thank you so much, Junie, for being my guest today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. You're an amazing host. Really appreciate our time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.